How y'all doing?
Good morning.
What's happening? Hi, Miss Ava. This is the, come on stage and say hello.
I know.
Hi, everyone.
Good morning.
So good. Hey, Ava. You see the people. Ava, when they see us, A Wrinkle in Time, 13th, Selma, heavy films, heavy artistry, super particular in terms of subjecthood around stories, particular stories. Why these stories?
Good morning. You know what? I just make what I'm interested in at any particular time. And it's because it's really hard to make a movie. It is, it's like a 2-3 year process. And you're really married to it. I call these films my children because I don't have physical children, and for a reason. And this is what I'll leave behind. This is what my name is on. And so this is what will be said of me afterwards. So I put a lot of time, a lot of focus into it. And so why do that for something that you don't care about? So for me, I'm not kind of a director for hire. I have to be living and breathing the material. But also just even more, for me, I'm a film lover, and for me, it really goes beyond the idea of cinema. It goes into the idea of the image. Mm-hmm. You know, there's a reason why we use the term your mind's eye. You know, we think and remember in images, in pictures, right? And so film is just an artificial rendering of what's actually inside here. You know what I mean? It's a little different than music. It's a little different than, than even sculpture. We're recreating life in cinema. We're recreating stories that you remember, things that you're tapping into, things that really seep into your DNA and become a part of you. Yeah. And so, the power of images, it's been used to distort and malnourish, but it also can be used to nourish and to grow us. And so that's what I'm looking for whenever I start a project.
So I don't want to derail this, but there's definitely, I remember being at Array at the screening of the finale of When They See Us. Mm-hmm. You invited me out. Mm-hmm. And you're talking about filmmaking now, but there were also these moments where the characters who were representing real people, the folk who had gone, who were imprisoned, that it was both the characters who were present at the finale and those real people.
So yes, so when I invited you out to my campus Array, which is a creative campus that we have through our arts collective in Los Angeles, you're saying that the actors were there and the person that they portrayed were there.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
How was that for you?
It was deep, yes. But it was more than the film. And I think that while you're talking about, you've just talked about filmmaking, there's something else at stake for you. To have the willingness to bring characters together with the real, right? And it was such an interesting feeling for me to be present with these young brothers who were playing the lives of these older brothers. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about what that was like for you?
It was a lot of brothers to juggle. A lot of people. It was a huge cast. I don't know how many of you have seen When They See Us. About half. And so it's a huge, expansive cast. But then on any given day, we would have the real men and their families on set. So when Jarrell Jerome is portraying Corey Wise, just off camera, just a little bit, whatever image you're looking at, 3 feet off camera, the real Corey Wise is sitting there like this, looking at us. And we began to feed off of that. Man. We loved it. We loved having them there because it didn't make us feel more responsible, but it gave everything a heightened importance. Yeah. And I think that's something to be said for connecting the dots between our art and our imagination and kind of the real world and real world impact. And I think that project, did that in a way that I hadn't really experienced before. With Selma, most of our elders that I was focusing on had passed away. There were some who were still with us at the time and are still that I was able to speak with, but the predominant focus of it, Dr. and Mrs. King were no longer with us. With 13th, it was, wasn't following the real life of one person. So this was a completely different thing for me. It was much different than Queen Sugar, when I could just make Ralph Angel do whatever I want him to do. Right. This was trying to stay true to someone's truth, and it took a lot of attention.
Yeah. So this makes me think that there's a way in which maybe what we're talking about now is the artistic process and our lives as artists, but there's also this real investment that you have, kind of social impact. And again, off camera, all of these things that you're starting to do that helps to demonstrate the value of others. And I'm hoping maybe through a conversation about, maybe sharing a little bit more about what Array is, kind of giving us some of the granular detail, and maybe how it affects those who you value. It would help us a lot, I think, in the audience understand, say, the relationship between what it means to make art and what it means to believe in others.
Sure. Well, I think art and activism are very closely aligned because both require imagination. You have to envision something that is not there as an activist, and you have to envision something that is not there as an artist, and you have to take the steps to make them so. And so there's a real close alignment in that for me. At Array, we focused on the image. We focused on the cinematic image and the way in which the telling of story in a distorted way about all of us and who we are has really diminished us as people. The storytelling is such a part, it's the crux of our belief about each other, the stories we've been told about each other, right? And not just the stories that we've passed along in whispers between family and generations, but, the way that the image has been used to really harm, to really, portray certain people as thugs, certain people as lazy, certain people as, frivolous, certain people as sinister. It's the stories that have done that have been kind of beaten into us through repetition over the years. And so that's what we try to deconstruct and disrupt at Array, all of the systems around the story. So, you can be a filmmaker and make a film, right? But how does that film reach the audience? That's called distribution. And there's all these locks and all these roadblocks for people like me, people of color, women of all kinds, to reach an audience that you may not even imagine, right? So that's why when you see independent film in a theater, or you hear about something, you go support, because the odds that it ever made it to you are so slim, right? There are barriers around marketing, the ways in which I hear a snap. Somebody knows what I'm talking about. The barriers to marketing, the kinds of films that get the dollars to even be in your Netflix queue that you're aware of, right? There are barriers there. There are barriers to production. There are barriers to edit. There are barriers. A film reaching you is a miracle. I just want you to know that. It's true. When you watch a film that is not, a huge Marvel movie or something massive, or a Disney movie, the fact that it even reached, that you were aware of it, and then that you were inclined to watch it, and that you were nourished by it, and you finished it, just know you have participated in a small miracle. Yeah. And so that's what we focus on at Array, trying to make more miracles.
Well, but it also feels like the ways in, the granular ways in, is like making sure that there are key grips and DPs and
the making of the film,
right?
Yeah, so
right,
that's a lot of what we do as well. Thank you. The disruption of the actual experience of making the film. A lot of people laud me for being the first Black woman director to do this and that, but it's bittersweet if I walk on a set and I'm the only one. Yeah. And so it's important for me to not just bring a few people along. I'm talking parity. I'm talking equal amounts of men and women. I'm talking about fully integrated crews with all kinds of people. And the refrain that we continue to hear is, "Oh, we can't find them." I was like, well, there's a scenic painter. I just want to talk about this. I'm obsessed with the scenic painter. The scenic painter is the coolest job, okay? there's so many cool jobs on a film set, but the scenic painter is the painter that comes in and makes the wall, and when they see us in the houses, even though it was on a stage and we just put up the wall, look old, look like it has been, that the people have been living in it for 16 years, right? Putting a little Jerry Curl juice on the, just a little bit of it, putting a little bit of the, little bit of whatever the mother was frying chicken. You know how sometimes the grease just kind of collects, all of those things. And the scenic painter is in charge of making a white wall look like a lived-in wall. It's a painter whose arms. You telling me there's no graffiti artists out there that can make $100 an hour being a scenic painter?
And doesn't know what grease look like.
Doesn't even know, right, but doesn't even know that job exists, doesn't know that it's a union, doesn't know that it's a real job, it's a career job, it's a beautiful job. So part of what we're doing with one of our initiatives is just trying to educate people to all the jobs that are possible and educate our industry to the fact that there are people of color and women of all kinds who can do that job. We have to think of it in a different way and make those connections. Because the main thing is, well, I can't find anybody to do the job. And so we're trying to create those pathways.
So I'll just say on Ava's behalf that part of that is creating the list. So it's I need a director of photography, and you say nobody out there, we got the list.
We've got the list.
You got the list.
Yes, we're making a list.
And I think that in those moments where you're so committed to not only your own craft, but increasing the value of the craft for a people or for more people, that's really worth an applaud. So would you guys give it up for Miss Ava? Okay.
Thank you. I always say, and I really believe this, if your dream only includes you, it's too small. It's fine. It's cool. It'll be good for you, and that might be the size that you want. But if you want to be enlarged, you got to be doing something for more than just yourself. I think everybody here knows that.
Well, Boo, you're large, and it's awesome. To do this work requires resources, space, friendships, alliances, and because I think that it's one thing to make a movie, it's another thing to make future movie makers. And I think here we're surrounded by people who are doing things and want to do things. How do you bring the necessary ingredients together? Let's say the two-part. How do you bring the necessary ingredients together to make a film? And then how do you bring the necessary ingredients together to support this visionistic stuff that you're doing back at Array?
Yeah, well, you've been very influential as I've thought about how to move forward with all of these ideas that I have. And I really started to think about the idea of space, holding space, but also creating space and owning space. What you've done is just extraordinary. 4 years ago, you gave me a beautiful tour of everything that you've done in Chicago and all these spaces you've created. And it was that moment, as well as sitting with Robert Redford and him telling me, kid, this Array thing that you've been focusing on for all these years is cool, but no one is going to really take it seriously until you have space. Like when I bought the Sundance Ranch years ago, then people were like, oh, now I get what Sundance is. Or Haile Garima, who the legendary filmmaker who in DC, who has Sankofa Bookstore, right? And he has a space that he makes his films downstairs, and they sell books and beautiful vegetarian food upstairs, right? And this whole idea of creating space is for us to congregate around our ideas and owning those spaces and operating those spaces with all the things that are important to us. I've really come to recognize that there are riches in the niches, the little pieces that have been kind of blanketed over by the dominant culture of film studios or television studios. We're finding that the specificity of our stories and our experiences is the good stuff. Yeah. It's the stuff that makes us wealthy and full and fat, off of ideas and imagination. And so I'm trying to continue to consider how to bring all these ideas together.
Yeah. It's I don't know if you guys get out to LA, but I would encourage you all to come and visit Array. There are these other moments that seem important where certain stories are not told. One has to pitch stories. One has to say, "Oh, I have this great idea about these 4 brothers who were put." It seems like Hollywood is more excited about the stories of blacks or the stories of others like now that they recognize that there is a way to monetize those things. But can you talk a little bit about the creative process and how you decide, boom, this is important, and then that moment from it being important to you to it being important to a film house to it being important to the world. Can you talk a little bit? I really want to talk about art a little, and I'm curious about that with you.
Well, we've tried to build our own systems of distribution and amplifying things so that we can rely on people valuing our stories a lot less because, they may value it today and not value it tomorrow. So that's not what we're building. We're building something that allows us to be prioritized and centered in every moment and every day of our lives, right? That's the institution building that I'm working on, that you're working on, that I know many people here are working on and thinking about. And so with that, it was really about taking power from folks saying, yeah, that's good. And yes, I'm interested in that. And instead building our own pipeline so we can say, we're interested in it, we believe other people will be, and it may not be 3,000 screens around the country, but our current release is a 19-year-old black man from New Orleans, 19 years old. He wrote, edited, shot, and directed a film while he was in high school. He's from New Orleans. It's about Wendell Pierce is in it. It's like about the rural, kind of the rural South, and it questions faith in the black community. It's called Burning Cane. So this kid, he was so. I look at the film and I just don't know how he did it. 17 years old. He's 19 now. He's a freshman at NYU. He submits it to Tribeca Film Festival, which is one of the big film festivals in New York City. He gets in. Huge deal. Not only gets in, he gets into the top category, like the competition category. Huge. People are like, wow, what a success. Good for him. No, he wins all 3 top awards, Best Director, top film, and editing. He's now nominated for a Gotham Award, which is a big independent film award. His film, which we opened, Array, because we distribute films, we opened on Friday at IFC Center in New York, had sold out shows, and was a New York Times critic pick. This is a kid. This is a 19-year-old, right? Like, we have to understand what the power is right in front of us. He made something with what he had. He wasn't thinking about studios. He sure wasn't thinking about studios because he gave the film to a black woman-owned distribution company and said, there you go, right? But the honor of this generation saying, I don't need this brother, his name is Philip Yeomans, not needing to be authenticated by Paramount and Sony and Disney and Netflix. But he came to Array and he said, I've seen what you've done with these films. Can you take care of my baby? And we did. And so I'm so inspired by a kid who is not enamored by all the trappings of what maybe enamored me early on moving into the space, who's just about story. I've been so inspired and recentered by watching him just fight for and defend and share his story by any means necessary. Sometimes we say by indie means necessary. That it's now out in the world and doing well. And so he's inspired me to say, what do you really need to tell your story? And beyond story, for people that are not artists or who are not thinking about film, what do you need to do whatever it is you want to do? Yeah. What do you need, not what do you want? What do you actually need to do the thing? Because when you really think about it, you don't need as much as you maybe think. I mean, when you were first starting out with acquiring and building and kind of blossoming all these spaces, I mean, you started with what you had, where you were, right?
$5.
$5. Look at this. Ladies and gentlemen, $5. Look at him now. Look at him now.
You guys, we got to get off stage. Please give a hand to Ava DuVernay.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.